Wow, that was a very loud, this meeting is being recorded. So welcome everyone. Today is August 29th, 2023. I am your facilitator for the CLEAN Network meeting today. And every time I'm the facilitator, I'm always astounded that we have had weekly telecons of the community since 2008. We're getting Guinness Book World Record levels. Who's been here, what we've talked about has changed over the years, but that's been constant. So, and we found a really simple thing to do, just keep on doing it. It's a workable strategy. So I appreciate that. So, Gina, if I remember right, we have some informal conversation topics that we're talking about today. Is that right? Well, I'm going to say that's what we agreed to. Your audio is still having trouble. But before we do that, do we have any announcements? I have one, but I'll have one. I'm assuming that echo is coming from Gina. Gina, you're really having audio issues today. Geez, haven't seen G's in a while. Jim, welcome. Do you have an announcement?
Sure. Hi, Frank. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
So I am pleased to announce that Washington, D.C. is once again going to provide, I think, a very important advance for climate education in American schools. So this is for the benefit of everyone. As you know, Washington, D.C. has now entering its third year of a middle school elective class on climate action, right? That's been now third year. D.C. will now have the first high school full semester course devoted to climate science and climate action. And that's in a public school. And for those who know DC, I think you'll immediately know the significance of this. It's a school where it's early college that is taught in the 11th and 12th grade. It's called Bard School, High School for Early College. It's part of a system of schools that DC is one of them. It is in the southwest portion of DC. It is in the Capitol Heights portion of DC. So if you know anything about the demographics of that part of DC, you would have an accurate guess if you see the students that are part of this class, of the demographics of that class. So I think that's a very powerful thing. It's being taught by a professor who is very dedicated to climate education. She's a professor of chemistry, Victoria Bampo. So this is a college professor who teaches high school. So anyway, I think that's going to benefit us all. Thank you.
So Jim, do you ever attend the the Coalition for Climate Education Policy? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I probably know somewhat, but I'm going to say, let's put that in the category of something I should be doing that I am not currently.
Whether you should do it is one thing, but I'll put a link to it in the chat. They meet on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. And one of the things, if you go, I just put the link to the website, they're doing bright spotting on district or state climate education policy advances, and is happening all over the country in different ways. And so, as these things emerge, you're moving from a single school to a system to a community, and up. But really advancing these priorities. So you'll notice on the policies website they have state policies that are advancing and district, I think they're called district policies. So this is kind of beginning to get something on a radar screen where that might be something to share.
If I could mention on that, Frank, and I think I know your response.
Okay.
Very positive response on things. That when we're making social change or educational change, it's good that we do it from the top down and we do it from the bottom up. So I would think this is, it's certainly there's the top down. The district is wanting funny thing, the district in the District of Columbia means both. It means the city essentially, and it means the educational district. Has been very forward on wanting things on climate change, but this is largely coming from a professor and a school that wants to do it, but they can sync up, right? This can push policy ahead over, well, we're doing it, So don't tell us it can't be done. It's being done.
Right. So I mean, this is part of that socializing. These are examples and instances, and then they could be, transferred and done systemically as opposed to organically. You can move both at the same time, but sometimes having a practice actually being done is like, oh, I recognize that, I see that, I understand that, as opposed to a pitch. Sometimes they don't. So I appreciate it, Jim. Gina, you had your hand up, and then I'm going to go to Carolyn and then Rachel. And Gina,
Yes.
are you there? You are. We can hear you.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to say that we released the call for proposals for the 2023 Excel event, and I will put the link to that in the chat. If anyone has any questions about it, please feel free to email me, reach out to me. You can even message me here in the chat. And we are closing that in a little bit less than 2 weeks. So definitely reach out with any questions, but we're really excited about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Gina. Carolyn?
So I'm sure that you guys are all probably following a lot of the weather updates. So there is a significant chance that Idalia will be a direct hit to Tallahassee, coming in as a Category 3. It's moving rapidly now, so hopefully it doesn't sit over us and flood the city, but there's really no way to know at this point. I do think it's significant that I just saw this article, and they're definitely noting. I mean, God, you saw the news about like 100-degree plus water in the Gulf, and noting, rapid intensification as a process becoming the norm, really addressing the influence that climate change has on what these storms look like and how they behave. So, I mean, I'm as prepared as I can be. I'm leaving to the last possible minute to go fill my cooler with ice. My freezer already has 5 gallon jugs in it. And I have a huge power bank so that I can charge my phone and use an electric kettle. Yeah, sorry, I'm a little bit word vomity. I'm anxious, as you can imagine. It's kind of a hurry up and wait scenario, but we're starting to get the gray skies, high winds, rain, etc. And my campus is where I teach is closed for the entire rest of this week. So I say the good news is that we are having better climate coverage on these incidents. But in the meantime, please just kind of, keep us in your thoughts. If prayers are a thing that you do, I will take whatever is on offer at this point, because I'm a little bit scared, not gonna lie.
Carolyn, I hear you. I mean, obviously I work at NOAA, and even though I'm on the climate side, ready.gov is a great place to make sure that you and the people that you know and in our community with have a plan. So hopefully that's the go bag and all that stuff is there. I did put a link to the projected outcome. I mean, the projected path, and God, those are hard. But either way, stay safe and leave if you have to. It's hard. Rachel, you're also in Florida, but you're on a different side of the state, so it's hard to segue from that, Carolyn. But
though some of the models have it basically going up through Georgia and the Carolinas, swinging back around to hit like Miami and Broward, which, Rachel, I hope for your sake that doesn't happen. But at that point, it just feels like spite.
I appreciate that. I'm looking for the cone of uncertainty, and I'm not seeing it right now. But I appreciate that.
I have a good recent article from our local newspaper that has all the paths and everything in it.
Yeah, oh, there it is. Yeah, yeah. I did put a link to the frequently asked question about hurricanes and climate change from the 2018. I mean, it's a trick of all the climate impacts. It's one of the trickiest ones to talk about, the connection between hurricanes. And
Yeah,
climate
it's about intensity more than it is frequency.
Exactly, rapid intensification. So, stay safe. That goes for you, Rachel, as well, and anybody in South Carolina and Georgia and so on. So, Rachel, over to you.
Okay, is my mic working today? Oh, good. Last Zoom call, I had so many troubles. Anyway, thank you. Carolyn, you're in Tallahassee, is that right? Yeah, gosh, I really do pray for you, and I am a praying person. So, have you? Not sure your experience in hurricanes. We've certainly been in a number of them. I'm sure you have too.
I was here for Michael.
For which one?
I was here for Michael.
Yeah. So, definitely, you know, one of our focuses in Climate Ready is hurricane preparedness, and teaching our kids even how to be prepared for these hurricanes. But they can be pretty unpredictable. I've been in a number of hurricanes, even in the Carolinas, which oddly were worse than any of the hurricanes I was in Florida. And so I'm really hopeful that we're not going to be it's not going to be as intense as they're predicting. You never know. It can slow down, can speed up, whatever. So yes, indeed, anyone who's in that path. I had my hand raised because actually Jim reminded me of something that I've been wanting to highlight for a while, but I haven't been able to attend these regular meetings because I've been so busy. But lately I've been kind of getting things in order and such that I can attend them. And I wasn't sure if you guys were aware, but it's on that subject of curriculum in high schools dealing with climate change. When I was a high school teacher, I taught a course called ACE Environmental Management, and the curriculum changed in 22, and it's further, the change is continuing in their next curriculum, which extends out to 27. And there is a solid chapter, and this is new, on managing for climate change. And that was, I thought, a huge step. This is a curriculum that is accepted in Florida schools and in any schools really that are using ACE curriculum. I can share the syllabus link with you. ACE, if you're not familiar, is the Cambridge system similar to AP. Where it is college curriculum taught by high school teachers who are trained, and then they take a test at the end, just like AP, but their college credit is with the University of Cambridge in the UK and not the College Board here in the States. So I'll just include that link if you want to look through it. It's pretty interesting curriculum. Like I said, I taught it for a number of years, but towards the end of when I did teach it, I was so pleased to see that they added a whole chapter devoted to climate change. So that was exciting, and I wanted to share with the group.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Rachel. I am deeply interested in this. Jen, do you have a physical hand? Everybody else has been using those virtual hands.
I know, but it won't. I don't know why it's not working. So hi everybody. So I just wanted to share that sorry for all the background that the Wild Center was successful in getting a couple of new project grants through the Institute of Museum and Library Services that we're going to be exploring and rolling out this fall. So one, well, actually, I should say three, but anyway, so one is to build out our climate leadership program into a year-round program where we're able to pay young people for participating on a monthly basis. So we'll be able to pay them, provide transportation, like stipends and stuff, in addition to like a regular wage, to be part of like leadership development. And also it's focused on climate readiness and workforce development and work pathways. And so thinking about how we can like bring them out to like we have Clarkson University is doing a lot of wind innovation. So we want to go visit their wind lab and like to hear about like what sort of innovation design they're doing and like go see all the test sites and stuff. We're going to do like one on hydro, like so small scale hydro and solar. You know, we have like a lot of ideas on how this is all going to work. So that was one project that we just got funding for. We also are going to be working, doing a cultural exchange with the Frontenac Arch Biosphere Reserve. Biosphere reserves are UNESCO designated protected areas that have special ecological and cultural significance. So the Adirondack region is where I live, is a biosphere designated biosphere, and Frontenac Arch is in Ontario, Canada. So they've been doing youth summits for a while, and they are also primarily focused on reaching Indigenous communities. So we're going to be doing like some cross-cultural exchange and support over the next 18 months with them. And then finally, we also have a new national leadership grant through IMLS with FIPS, led by FIPS Conservatory in Conservancy, sorry, Botanical Garden in Pittsburgh, that is focused on doing climate action planning for education with cultural institutions. So, you know, a lot of cultural institutions like the Wild Center and others are working on like doing greenhouse gas reductions and like thinking about like internally how they're creating action plans for their sites. But this is going to be focused on like external community engagement and education outreach. So those are some fun, good news announcements for us. And we're adding staff. So that's the other thing that's really exciting for me.
Do you want to say anything more about that last point? You know, that's something that shows up possibly in the CLEAN community.
Staff. Well, we've
Hiring.
hired 2 of those positions already, and we'll be shortly working on the 3rd, which will be focused on communications and development work, and also starting to map our alumni and working on that. And then my colleague Hannah Barg is going to be doing a lot more network management, because our youth climate network is really like exploded, and so we actually need a staff person to help be more like to respond, be more responsive to all of the requests and the sort of support network in place for the all of the summits happening globally.
Awesome. It just occurred to me, some networks do a really good job of putting their job announcements in the network. I don't know if that's part of CLEAN's practice.
I have done that. I did do that early on when we first started hiring, and we had got great applicants. So we're sort of like using that pool.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, thank you.
Sure, of course. So any other, I mean, I guess I'll just give you a quick update on climate literacy. So we are wrapping up. We actually have a meeting later today with the writing team. It's all federal writing team on the climate literacy guide for the update for the 2023. It's strong. It should be going to the Subcommittee on Global Change Research Program, who are the government entity that approves it, in early September. And then we expect to go to public comment period in early to mid-October. So you'll have an opportunity to push it as hard as you can, or celebrate as hard as you can the things that you really like and things you really see that need to be strengthened, improved, languages, you know, whatever. And we are really using the IPCC and the NCA 5, because we have proprietary early access, as a backstop to all of this, similar to the way the NRC framework from the National Academies, the backstop of NGSS and the supporting standards. We're using that same approach in this context. So NCA 5 is expected to be released sometime in October to November. So if we pull it off and we release it at COP28 on December 8th, it'll be spectacular and surprising, but that's still our goal. But again, for you all, we should be really seeing this for you to get, your input into this in that, early October timeframe, early to mid. So, any other announcements? Nice to see you all. Okay. Since we don't have any, Gina, we had talked about the follow-up on the TCTAC, EPA TCTACs, and
Yep.
the relationship to Justice 40. So let me just give you a little context of what these are. EPA released a significant amount of money, $177 million through a program called the Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers Program. This was inspired from some of our colleagues' work. Deb Morrison, Tom Bowman, and Robert Ballard and Beverly Wilson, Beverly Wright, and a couple other environmental justice leaders and people from our community were really thinking about how could universities and entities really help communities who are underserved and historically marginalized get access to funds and programs and initiatives to help them become more resilient and thrive. If you just to throw the money out on the street, those who are already good at getting the money keep on getting the money, and they don't necessarily go to communities. This is where the Justice 40 comes in. Justice 40 says that 40% of funds that relate to these topics need to go to historically underserved and underrepresented communities. So this is about doing the technical assistance to make sure that that's true. They're important. They're spread all over the country. You can see on the link, there are a number of regional TCTAC partners. TCTAC is the acronym, the way you say it. Still strange. I'm old enough to remember what TCTACs are. I don't think of TCTAC when I say this, but I think, for any of you who are working deeply in a regional context like Carolyn, I would think, the purple, whoever the Research Triangle Institute, that's the one that's going to be related to you, TCTAC 4. And Jen, you're TCTAC 2, which is WEACT. You already have a relationship. They're the lead, and then there's a lot of other organizations. I think building relationship with them is important to understand how these work. And so the one other setup I'll give you is NOAA, in partnership with a lot of other agencies, have been doing something called the Climate Engagement and Capacity Building Inventory of federal programs. This is our third year in a row. We added Justice 40 programs to that list this summer. And what we found was 26% of the programs, which we're currently looking at around 723 programs that relate to building climate capacity and engagement, services, nature-based solutions, are Justice 40. So there is a strong intersection in our work and Justice 40, thriving communities, historically serving, underserved communities intentionally. So I think, it's something that I know the CLEAN Network has been trying to broaden our participation and our partnership with other institutions and efforts around the country that are moving in these directions. Some of us will do this more directly than others. But anyway, I just want to give you some context for this topic today. I won't be able to release that analysis until later this fall. We're just going to interagency review of that analysis. The data is finished. We have to get the interagency review for quality control. Anyway, that's a setup. Gina, hopefully that's a good setup to start something. What would you like to talk about?
Thanks, Frank.
Sure. Really? Nobody's interested? Yeah. Hey, Ginger, we're going to start the classroom rules where no hands are needed in this space, but I appreciate it.
Well, okay. So, and I don't know if you can answer this, Frank, but like I'm looking at the Region 10 TikToks, and I'm wondering if I don't see any in these lists, but do you have any relationships with the Department of Energy? Because, with the Hanford cleanup, the current site management is very much whatever's on within the site boundaries is all we care about, and screw the community. And, and I see other Department of Energy, like they have a whole environmental justice initiative at Department of Energy, but it's like, you know, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and it's not doing anything in this case. And I'm trying to figure out how to kind of push from the outside and get some kind of federal partners to call out this other federal agency and say, you can't keep saying you're doing these good things over here while the impact of your work site over here is really bad.
Right. So Ginger, here's what I can say. I've been working with the federal government for 28 years in a variety of capacities. I've never seen a mobilization on climate like I'm seeing right now. It has some holes, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
the amount of agencies that historically would be working on this are there, but there's a whole lot of new. So new parts of energy, new parts of labor, new parts of treasury, you name it. It's like I've never seen this activation level. The amount of waves that are being propagated from all of this activity are very substantial. How it ripples out all the way into other parts of the federal family and all, I mean, we're the biggest bureaucracy in the world.
Mhm.
So it takes a while for this to radiate out. That said, I put a link to something called the Thriving Communities, the Federal Interagency Thriving Communities Network.
Okay.
So the TCTAC is just one Thriving Communities activity. There are a group of them. And energy definitely has Shalonda Baker's office is no joke.
What
She
is her
is
name? Solanda?
Shalonda Baker. She is the equity, the exact title, you know, but they have a
Yeah.
climate, an equity and
Equity and energy or something like that.
something like that office.
Yeah.
But they're
Okay.
working through all the funding actions and they're moving their way structurally through all the activities of the Department of Energy, which is a very significant body of work. If you want to see like what Department of Energy is doing, go to Department of Energy or DOE BIL, DOE IRA, and you'll see the whole list of things. This is what we did in our inventory. Once you have access to, we've already done this. So if you just want to look at a specific agency for a specific purpose, like do that, you're going to see a lot of things that you have like, what is that? Where did that come from? It came from BIL or IRA money. But how you implement that, Justice 40 is now being pushed into these expansions of federal activity through those two funding programs. CHIPS is also showing up. I just don't know as much about that one yet. But, you know, but Shalonda, if you want to know where equity and justice is doing in Department of Energy, Shalonda Baker is her office.
Well, and I have an announcement. I'm actually starting a new job on Friday. I am leaving the nuclear waste program and I am becoming a water quality lead for the state in North Central Washington. So I don't know how long it'll be before I get back on one of these calls. But since I won't be having to deal with them as an interagency partner personally, I can start making comments as a citizen of Richland, Washington, and that I'm tired of 9,000 car trips a day, 90% single occupancy vehicle. So cool. Thank you for the pointing.
Sure. Any other questions, topics, points of, what would you guys like to talk about?
Frank, if I could ask you a couple related questions on the TCTACs, as you've had, I've looked at it a little bit before the call, and thank you, Gina, by the way, for letting, you're always letting us know what the likely topic is. Of what seems to be where the focus will be. Obviously, environmental justice very strong. It would be how much is this also for more like the the straight education part, that there's this thing of the money or the emphasis or the recognition or the working with of actually education as part of this, because environmental justice is a related subject and it certainly overlaps, certainly in what we do, but it's, that's a little different than education. And then the related question is the approach of the federal government of when the federal government gets into something. It says, oh, we got to fund this, we have to do this. One approach is, well, we're going to fund our usual favorites, and we're going to do things, and we're going to give them money, and they're going to start doing what we're now saying is important. Or is it, look, there have been people who have been doing this for a long time, school districts doing this for a long time. We should get behind them and support them, and maybe a little combination of both. Or is it, no, we're throwing those out, we're going to start fresh. We don't recognize what people are already doing in these communities, and all this ties together, right? Education is workforce development, is where the money goes and everything. A
Right.
feeling of how the federal government's handling that.
Well, I mean, the first thing I can say, it's not a good point. It's a clear point, but it's not one that this community is going to like, is that the funding for climate education is missing. We're funding climate training, climate technical assistance, climate workforce, climate and community engagement, climate, you name it. Everything around education, but not education. And that's Congress. That's Congress's decision on what got funded and what didn't get funded. So that's our first order of business, right? So the second piece is, so that means that you have to kind of connect education to something else in order for any of that money to come in. I know people are looking at the coastal resilience regional challenges and trying to go after that to get education into that, or connect education to workforce, or connect education to thriving community, or connect education. So which is a strategy. The problem is that the people who've been doing it and know they do it solidly, directly, are having to compete with every other priority. So the fact that Jen started off our announcements with 3 successes is even stronger testament, because those programs that she competed for are not climate priority programs. They're just programs. That's why we're seeing a decrease in the funding in our community, because they're just not a dedicated, prioritized one. Now, second piece, Jim, of your question is who gets funded? And what I think the TCTACs are trying to do is really important, because the community, I think we in this network would agree that a lot of the climate literacy, climate education, climate empowerment, whatever we want to call it, in historically marginalized communities, even if you use the EJ screen tool, those communities probably are getting really poor climate education. And this is a thing that all students should be getting access to, especially historically marginalized, those who are going to receive the impacts the hardest, the first, and miss the opportunities that come with solving climate change the most. So, like, there's an equity aspect, but how the resources map to those communities with partners who actually have deep practice and capability, I mean, it's a really hard way to do what your question implies, is how do we do that? So, Jen, I see your hands.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. So it's interesting because we just submitted to the NOAA Coastal Resilience Regional Challenge Grant. Sorry, it looks like I froze. And while we were doing that, we were exploring, like the EJ mapping tools and stuff, and like looking at our like whole region. So like there's the Adirondack Park, but the North Country region of New York State is a economic zone in the state, and there's 14 counties. The Adirondacks is part of that. And like there's only 2 EJ zones. One is around Fort Drum and the other is around Akwesasne, which is a Native community. And what was interesting is that the rural communities are so tiny that they're not in the incomes are, it's actually like quite impoverished, but they're not showing up because it's not where it's not drilled down that far, like in the tool. So it's really interesting, and it's also coming up in New York State's new Environmental Bond Act, which the governor has been doing listening sessions around the state, and a lot of the community, these tiny little rural communities don't qualify for the funding because they are, even though their income rates are super like quite low, and it's like real, anyway, but they don't, it's not showing up on some of the tools because they're looking at a much bigger, like a bigger population. I don't know how that gets compensated for, or like how we start to think about that, but it's interesting in terms of thinking about areas that are under resourced. And I didn't even know this until we started looking into this new NOAA resilience, and I started hearing this information coming in around the Environmental Bond Act listening sessions and where communities are at. And people are kind of frustrated because they can't get funds to do resilience work, or there's a lot of state funding coming in, and there's a lot of funding available through IRA, but the communities don't qualify, even though they technically they should qualify. They're just too tiny.
So Jen, one strategy to consider. Justice 40 just says 40% of the dollars. It doesn't say what the other 60 are doing. It just says at least 40.
Oh yeah, no,
So,
I know. And we tried it. We have like all the data, like we have all the demographic data and the income data and all those other indicators, and like all the mapping. I mean, the mapping tool that the EPA has is super handy with a lot of other pieces. So like there's a lot of other things that we can put in there. It's just interesting in the sort of scheme of things. Like, how do you kind of figure that out? I'm talking about it from a very tiny rural communities that are very geographically separated, and like, there's only like
sure.
maybe 1,000 people or maybe 200 people or 50 people that live in a community.
Right. So do we have any other topics or points?
If I could ask another follow-up question on things, but I don't want to be making too much on the subject that maybe we should move on or whatever, but on this subject.
Sure. I mean, we don't have another topic on the table unless somebody wants to go somewhere else.
I think one would be knowing from let's see, I will certainly not say I represent a certain community, but I certainly work within a certain community or communities, and that would be very much the parts of the environment, the climate education communities that are in these communities. I'm very much very much in tune. I'm a white person who works with a lot of Black people, and a lot of different programs, and including the students right behind me, which was a STEM festival mostly for Black kids, right? That we get experience in the ways in which, when money comes in and does things, how the programs that are for Black kids and other kids of color in climate education get always pushed aside. And one of the ways it is a thing of saying, well, the education is so poor, it's just terrible. We all recognize that it's not money for the Black schools or the whatever. So we can just say there's nothing to be supported. There's nothing going on that's good because it's so poor. Well, yes, we know it's very poor. There's not a lot of funny things, but that doesn't mean that there haven't successes in those that push forward on it, who make it happen anyway. It might be at a city level or state level. And so it's just sort of like kind of maybe pushing back on the thing of, wait a second, are we just being dismissing that there aren't already programs doing exactly what the federal government is saying right here? And exactly, and maybe it's the other one, is exactly knowing that its money doesn't come down to education, but it does sort of come up with workforce development, or the question of, like the IRA with all the money for electricians and engineers and things. Okay, but those are all white men, right? We're addressing that. We've got more engineers and electricians for you. They happen to be Black. So, I mean, it's just a little bit of, doing a little, recognizing that these programs are going to push back on this and saying, don't dismiss us, we're not here.
So Jim, one important consideration that I think all of us need to struggle with is that when it gets to climate action, they fund all this stuff around education, and they want a workforce. And we all know the workforce of the future is going to be vastly different in what they're doing and have the ability to do than the one we currently have. And where does that foundation get set? It gets set in education. But if you never fund that work at the elementary, middle, high, before technical education begins, then you've missed a huge opportunity. And so there's a structural mismap, you know, a deep understanding that career identification happens much younger than career development. And if you want a really big social response, which we do, I mean, it's just, but they just missed the boat. And so I think it is more a tactical point than it is a, you know, then I think we have not made the case effectively in the education community our importance in this wide societal transformation to deal with climate change, you know. And then you get into states where a lot of that work really happens. So Colleen, I see, you know, your hand, right? Alaska, how it works in Alaska is gonna be really different than how it works in Florida, and really different than how it works in Colorado, and really different than how it works. There's some similarities, but New York's gonna do stuff really differently than Hawaii. And so like but I have a feeling we're gonna get to focused, differentiated, and common conversations. That's what we've been trying to do in the Clean Network for a long time. But you know, we are not prioritized right now. So what are we going to do to change that? I don't know, but it's something we need to tee up. And maybe it's what will show up in the SL Summit, or maybe it's something else. Colleen, I'm sorry, your hand.
No, you're great. I was glad to hear you keep going. Didn't want to interrupt you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I shared this before, but one of the Department of Energy fundings is the Energy Transitions Initiative Partnership Projects. And so there are several, and Alaska is basically its own region as part of that. And so we have someone at REAP who works with that, and basically it works with communities on technical assistance, and that technical assistance can be very wide ranging. And we successfully made the argument that education needed to be part of that technical assistance for one of our communities, McGrath. And so my coworker, Tyler, who's been on these calls before, he went with others as well, but basically they planned a week of energy education as part of this ETIP program. And we are really trying to use that as I'll pull up, I don't have it right now, but I'll send the link of the blog that one of our coworkers wrote up from that. But, you know, trying to, basically using it as a way of saying, hey, here's this importance of education as part of these community projects, so that we can say, look, ETIP across the entire nation, and, and this includes territories as well, should include education as part of that. So we're really hoping that this will be something, like we're working on a couple different fundings, like refunding for this ETIP program, and we want to include education as part of it, like maybe funding half of the time of an educator as part of this ETIP, our next round of ETIP funding. And so then, and hopefully that we can use this so that others can also do education as part of their ETIP funding and really be part of that. So I hear it is so frustrating that it's not just its own funding, right? Like I totally am with you on that, Frank. Like, why can I not just go submit a grant application to get another 2 educators at REAP? Like, it's so neat. Like, why can't I just do that? Why do I have to do this? But I am hoping that, REAP is certainly not the only one, obviously, who is demonstrating the need and the success of this energy education with other projects, or climate education with other projects. And so, I just want to share that little success story, that hopefully that will also not just be an Alaska thing, right? That it will cascade to other ETIP projects. So I'm gonna find that link really quick, because I got some fun photos in McGrath with Tyler doing some awesome stuff. Throw that in the chat.
Thank you. Hey, look, any success we can get, like, success begets success, so any other topics? I mean, we've kicked this one around. It's about 48. We got about 12 minutes left. Is there anything else burning that we need to explore? We can go back to this topic. Ginger, what you got?
Steph, I have a really cool story to share. So I went to Los Angeles for the weekend. My son is a classical musician who plays bass. And one of his bass colleagues is a young Black man from South Central Los Angeles. And his name's Moses. And Moses had a job with the Youth Orchestra Los Angeles, which is the Phil's program to work in the community and teach people orchestral music. And Moses decided he didn't want to be a teacher anymore. So he recommended Wyatt to be his replacement. So Wyatt got a job at Youth Orchestra Los Angeles, working in Inglewood, where he is one of 2 white people in the center. But Moses went on and got an internship with the Museum of Natural History. Now, he is born and raised in South Central, rough neighborhood. Wyatt said, you know, he's been to his house, not a great neighborhood, but went to UCLA, has a music degree. But during COVID, he noticed for the first time that house finches have red on them. And it caught his eye. And he was like, wait, what? I've never seen these red birds before. What are they? And so he just like went all out into the natural sciences and got really obsessed with it, and is probably going to do a complete career about face. But my really good part of this story is that props to the Museum of Natural History for taking this kid on for a year-long ornithology internship. I mean, he has a 4-year degree, but it was in music, not in any, sciences. And just, he took us on a private tour through the collections and was like showing us different birds, and just seeing the joy on this young man's face, and knowing he grew up in the community and now he's going to be back in the community teaching and learning and doing research. And it was just a real bright spot, because I know we all are with agencies that want to be diverse and inclusive. And it was so exciting to see that they took him on. And anyway, it was just really cool. And I got to see some really interesting birds and bats and other things, including ivory-billed woodpeckers, sadly, in drawers. But anyway, I just thought you guys would really appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you, Ginger. And it's going to be sad to miss you, because I know as you transition to a new gig, but I have a feeling you're still going to be in the community, just in not making these calls per se. But that's an awesome story. Does anybody else have any other uplifting stories or things where successes have been made?
I did have a story, but I see the other Frank's hand up, and I don't think he's.
Ah, sorry, I can't see your where that is on the image. There's like a yellowish background, so kind of like hard. Oh, there it is. I see your hand, Frank. Gee.
Yeah, I have to change the color of that hand. So I got a couple of questions for folks. Number one, I am curious how many folks gathered here are going to be at AGU this year? Okay, good. Just wanted to know, because it's finally back in my neck of the woods, so I'm planning on going. So it'd be great to actually see some of you in person. The other question I've got, and Jen, and you in particular might be able to give me some insight into this one. Though I'm not intending to go to COP28 this year, my wife and I are looking at going to 29. And we always look at vacation excuses in this, and we've never been to Australia. So this is one of the reasons we're looking at heading that direction. However, that said, granddaughter is going to be a senior that year in high school. And we are seriously thinking about taking the grandkids with us. Now, the folks we usually get credentials from, Quaker Earth Care Witness, will probably be able to help both Annette and I with credentials, but the kids are a different ballgame. And when I say the kids, the granddaughter, it will be, I guess, 18 by that point, and the grandson is going to be about 14. And in any case, it would be nice if they were actually tied into a youth delegation someplace, because that would definitely enhance the experience. So as we get closer to that date, I would love to hear from any of you that have insights into how we might be able to get them credentialed, to take them with us.
I can respond, I guess, quickly, Frank, because I know we're almost out of time. But there's lots of organizations that do have credentials and often have like potentially have extra badges or whatever. It's like kind of putting a call out. I know we have like a WhatsApp group that's been kind of like going from, I started at COP26 and it just keeps getting kind of recycled. People are looking for badges. I literally get emails every day of people looking for badges, like literally every day from all kinds of people looking for badges. And so, and we're a little unclear about if we're going to go this year. We're kind of waiting to see where our US Center proposal lands. Yeah, I mean, I imagine that there'll be a stronger youth presence in Australia just because it will, I think in Dubai, it will probably have less, there's less side events. There's going to be, it's going to be more restrictive, I think, like similar to Egypt. I wasn't in Egypt, but my understanding, if anybody is on the call right now that was there, was anybody there in Egypt last year?
But Jen, I'm hearing it's even going to be more restricted.
Yes, I think it's going to be
related to, like the youth are going to be like their own location off to the side.
Yes,
not at all
I think it's
blue or
going to
green
be
zone.
very restrictive. So we're like weighing that, the cost benefit of us going without that. We were literally just talking about that before this call, that, whether it makes sense because it's so expensive and like, it's just, we want youth to be able to plug in lots of places, be able to be in presenting spaces, like, take part in some of the actions, like if they choose to, like, we just want to make sure that we have a way to do that. And so it's good to start planning now. It's good to start connecting with organizations now, like that are badged. But they're, I'm happy to talk to you more about it. I mean, there's lots of orgs that are badged, and you can look at that list online. It's all there. So you can reach out to folks that either through this network or through the church, your church. Like I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for that.
Thanks.
Any other building on there? All right, looks like our last 4 minutes, Ginger, I'm sorry, Rachel, what's going on? You're muted, by the way, Rachel.
Of course. Only if there was time. I just wanted to share a success story of one of our students. We actually have several success stories. Some of them are going on to learn at University of Florida, for example, in environmental engineering and environmental policy and yada yada. But this one was relatively a recent development. Her name is Denisha Blaze, and she was actually one of my ACE students. While still at the high school, I was teaching the ACE curriculum in marine science, and she was influenced, I guess, and inspired to keep going. So I encouraged her to apply for our FAU program, the Climate Ready program. So she became an ambassador, and she is still going, and she is so she went through that whole 3-semester program we had. And now she's working with FXB, which I mentioned this a couple times, but this could be of interest, particularly of our Florida folks. She was a co-founder of a Florida chapter, which links teams together in working towards climate solutions. So I just wanted to share this amazing success story with you guys. I thought that you would find that of interest, that many people out here are doing some super positive things.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. That's probably a great way to end, but yet we have 3 minutes. So anything else? And by the way, that I've noticed that poster tube right there, that is my AGU talk from last year, sitting right there. So it would be exciting to see you all. If we don't have anything more, Jen, are you saying bye? She's saying goodbye. All right.
Bye. Bye, guys. Have a good week. If I don't see you for a
Goodbye.
while,
Let's
have
call
a
it there.
good couple months. Bye.
All right.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone. Good luck,
Bye.
Ginger.
Thank you.
Frank, could I ask a quick question before we head out?
Sure. Sure can.
If you know the answer. If we submitted a proposal for a session at AGU, do you know around when we'll hear back about whether or not those are accepted?
When you say a session or a talk,
Yeah, talk during the session, sorry.
I believe, I mean, Gina, I don't know if you're involved in that group, but I think the conveners and session organizers are making their decisions by the 31st of this